What's up, everyone? My name's Wes, and this is for my intercultural communications class. I did my movie review on Brokeback Mountain. Um, I don't think I'm gay, but I am trans, and also, I have a lot of gay friends who really love this movie, and I know it's surprising, but I have never seen this movie up until yesterday. I'm also currently recording this on Valentine's Day, and I'm wearing a cowboy hat because I was a cowboy this year for Halloween, and I have this hat left over. So I thought, what better than to wear a pink cowboy hat and on Valentine's Day and talk about a gay cowboy love story. So here we are today. This is my honest review of Brokeback Mountain, and yes, I have finally seen it. So I want to kind of go over, I have this cute little packet here. I want to kind of go over like the introduction to the story. So although it has not always been this way, LGBT presence in films is pretty popular today, but it did not used to always be. And Brokeback Mountain was made in 2005. I was born in 2002, and I grew up in the early 2000s, late 2000s. And when I was growing up, I never really noticed any gay characters in shows. Like, that just wasn't a thing that happened. Also, Brokeback Mountain was one of the more popular movies because of its stars, Jake Gyllenhaal and Heath Ledger. They were both pretty popular and new and cool and upcoming actors. Even though, rest in peace, Heath Ledger unfortunately passed away very young at like 27, I believe. But anyways, this is my little introduction. So here we go. So Ang Lee is the person who made this movie, and something that I think was so cool about this movie is what a big impact it had on the LGBTQ community at the time. Because, I obviously wasn't very aware of this because I was 3 years old when this movie came out. But when I was doing the review and I was researching it, I didn't really realize how it kind of changed the way society viewed gay media because it set a precedent that this is representation that people could do and it could win awards and it could become a mainstream thing, which now today, I mean, there's gay characters in a lot of movies and a lot of shows. So, the movie is basically about these two cowboys. Let's see. It's about these two cowboys, and it's about a very sad love story about how these two cowboys find each other and they fall in love, but they can't be together because this movie was set in like between the early 1960s to the early 1980s, before the AIDS epidemic, I believe. And obviously we know like back then that society did not view gay relationships the way we do now. If you were gay in the 1960s, 70s, 80s, it was very much like this thing that you hid and very much did not talk about, did not discuss, and definitely did not have open relationships about it or about being gay or with partners or things like that. So the story is basically about these two cowboys who fall in love, and their love is forbidden because they're two cowboys and they're gay and they're growing up. They're in rural Wyoming in the 1960s, 70s, 80s. Obviously, I think rural towns tend to be quite a bit more conservative, and especially since it's way more conservative because it's the 1960s and not the 20s like now. But I think it's really cool how it kind of has this Shakespearean kind of vibe to it because, Romeo and Juliet really loved each other, but they had these two forces just really trying to pull them apart. And I think it's just kind of cool because it's like kind of a Romeo and Juliet kind of situation, but it's with queer people. And I think that's one aspect that makes it so cool. I'm also a big history nerd, so gay cowboys were a thing that very much existed back in long time ago. But the thing with gay cowboys and even trans cowboys was like these people were free to be themselves because basically they lived off the farm. They were either farming or raising cattle or things like that, and they were self-sufficient, so they didn't have to worry about society's approval for either if you're gay or trans and you were a cowboy, because you could pretty much do whatever you wanted because you were self-sufficient. So on to my next point. This movie, both the physical movie and in the movie, there's discrimination for being gay and being about gay characters, because a lot of people think that this movie got snubbed for many awards because of Hollywood's homophobia at the time. And also in the movie, Jack is killed for being gay. Like, he is literally murdered. And it seems to be kind of a thing that people just kind of sweep past because, you know, when I went into this movie, I was expecting it to be kind of like a light-hearted story, kind of like a Modern Family kind of vibe, and that was not the vibe. Like, it is a beautiful, well-written, well-acted movie, but it does not have a Modern Family vibe. It's a very sad, deeply sad story. It's very beautiful, but it is an extremely sad story. But something I really liked about this story, especially as a trans person, is that I think it's so cool how Jack and Ennis are just kind of these normal guys. Like, they're just normal guys. Like, they're cowboys, they herd sheep. Sorry about my dogs upstairs. They herd sheep, they do cowboy things, you know. Jack has a wife and kids, I believe. But the whole story does not revolve around them being gay. Like, there's no coming out story. There's no, like, finding labels and things like that, which I find with a lot of modern stories that I think is kind of frustrating, is how, like, this whole person's existence revolves around being queer or being trans, because that is not what makes a person. Like, gay people brush their teeth, they shower, they eat, they sleep just like anybody else. And that's why I think it's so cool, because these are not just gay people, they're people, they're three-dimensional characters, and that's why I loved it so much. When this movie first came out, a lot of people made jokes about it, which is why when I went into it, I thought it was a very lighthearted movie. I thought there was going to be lots of jokes, lots of, like, lighthearted things, and that was, like, absolutely not the case. Again, it's a very sad story. But the reason I thought that was because there are so many gay jokes. Like, even now, like, there are so many gay jokes about this movie that I had no idea what I was going into when I saw it, because it has just been joked to death, like, relentlessly, I'm serious, that I had no idea going into it. And a lot of the plot does unfortunately revolve around homophobia, because, you know, if Jack and Ennis were a couple today, they would have no problems. Well, I shouldn't say they wouldn't have no problems, but they would not have as many problems as they had in the movie. Obviously, people do get hate crimes, people do get discriminated against. People do today go through these horrific things, and I'm not trying to diminish that in any way, shape, or form. But something in this uniquely is that, like, you know, it's rural Wyoming, it's the 60s, and Jack gets hate crimed. He gets hate crimed and murdered, and he unfortunately loses his life, and Ennis loses the love of his life because of the senseless hatred that society has for queer people and these two cowboys. And it's just a really sad situation, because all it needed was time. Like, I really feel like if they were a couple today, they would be a couple out and proud and just, you know, living their lives like regular people and not having to worry about getting hate crimed. Also, just a fun fact about this movie, apparently Heath Ledger kissed Jake Gyllenhaal so hard it either almost or entirely broke his nose, which is crazy. Another cool thing about this is that Heath Ledger did not speak at the Oscars, despite I believe, Brokeback Mountain winning an Oscar because there was so much homophobic rhetoric and jokes about this movie that he wanted to specifically take a stand about it, which I think is so cool. But I really do think, and a lot of people agree with me, that Brokeback Mountain was snubbed for Best Picture because it was about a gay couple. And I really do think that Hollywood's homophobic attitudes heavily had to do with that. But overall, to wrap this up, I would give this movie 5 stars out of 5 stars because it was beautifully written and exceptionally acted. And I really feel like the casting for this was beautiful. I know, like, a lot of people got called to this role but denied it because they didn't want to, I don't know, make out with a dude on camera. But that's whatever. I feel like the casting fell into place and it was beautifully well acted. I also think that it really broke ground for same-sex love stories in a way that no other movie or media or anything like that compared to or could live up to. But I really think this deserves its place in history and pop culture and everything like that because it was an amazing movie, and if you have not seen it, I highly recommend it. So yeah, thanks for watching to my long rant about Brokeback Mountain. I hope you enjoyed.